Welcome back, movie lovers. We'll be going through a movie called Close Your Eyes. Quite interesting, I must say. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Let's dive into it right away. The movie starts in 1985. Richard Gillespie, a town planning student, travels to see his older sister Natalie, with whom he is not particularly close because they each had a separate parent after their parents were divorced, through a scene of tower blocks. With her lover, Natalie recently purchased a very noisy apartment, only to have him break up with her after 2 months. Additionally, she dislikes her job as a buyer. They go for a late-night walk because Richard insists, and Natalie seems to get better. However, when Richard wakes up in the middle of the night due to loud music coming from the neighboring apartment, he discovers Natalie still awake and still very depressed. Despite Natalie's apology and justification that she only wanted someone to hug, Richard's attempts to lighten the tension are unsuccessful when she pulls him into a somewhat heated embrace. Richard doesn't appear to respond in any way. The movie follows the two between 1987 and 1990. Natalie's career stalls in a series of low-level administrative jobs she despises throughout this time, while Richard becomes a very successful town planner and somewhat of a Lothario. They cross paths again in 1991. Richard, who is dedicated to the environment and sustainable town planning, is given an interview for a position with the publication Urban Alert, which was established to pressure Docklands planners to take the needs of the neighborhood's residents into account. Despite having some reservations about Richard's motives, the editor, Colin, hires him to work alongside his assistant, Jessica. Meanwhile, Natalie fills out an application to work as Sinclair Bryant's secretary. Bryant is a very successful and wealthy stock analyst. Despite not being hired, she later marries Sinclair. Richard, who skips the wedding, ultimately pays Natalie a visit at her opulent Petersham house and is taken aback by her altered, more posh demeanor. He meets Sinclair, and they get along great because they are both very intellectual people with shared interests in books and outlooks on life. However, because she feels insignificant in comparison to Sinclair, Natalie is not entirely content with her life. She goes to Richard's flat soon after he pays her a visit at home. They end up on the floor naked after failing to contain their attraction for one another. Natalie tries to get Richard to break up with her. She is stopped, and he moves to the opposite side of the room. They finally give in to their urges and engage in sexual activity. Following that, they make an effort to stay away from one another, but this proves challenging when Sinclair invites Richard over for a social event. The two, who are still attracted to one another, decide to meet up again to work things out. Colin discovers he has AIDS while at work, where Richard has demonstrated his skill. He informs the office. Following this realization, Richard and Colin struggle to communicate with one another because they are both acting as though nothing is wrong. Once more meeting in Sinclair's parents' apartment, Natalie and Richard engage in sexual activity, but Natalie is certain that their connection must cease because, after all, they are siblings. Sinclair suspects Natalie is having an affair during the course of the weekend since she was not in Nuneaton as she claimed to be. He calls her after the dishwasher floods the kitchen, despite her continued denials. Colin, who works for Richard, is terminally ill, but Richard takes him out of the hospital one more time to provide a disagreeable city planner with information they want to publish in their magazine. The two of them grill him, and Colin consumes half of a sandwich before offering Richard the other half, who accepts it without any problems, and finally the city planner, who is scared to even approach it due to Colin's condition. The situation then deteriorates further as Richard develops an obsession with Natalie. When Richard unexpectedly arrives at their home, he discovers Sinclair alone. Sinclair immediately whisks him away on a boat trip he had planned for himself and interrogates him about Natalie's affair. Sinclair respects Richard's decision to withhold the identity even though he does not yet suspect him. Sinclair, however, will not accept that Richard does not know who it is. Richard completely loses control after learning that Sinclair and Natalie intend to move to America as a result of the recession, harasses her in public at a hotel, and then unsuccessfully attempts suicide by taking sleeping pills just as Natalie shows up unannounced at his apartment. On the condition that Richard acts appropriately, he is invited to their farewell celebration. Richard comes along with Jessica, who is now the editor because Colin has passed away, but leaves her soon after they get there to look for Natalie. When he locates her, he declares his intention to murder her and drags her away from the scene and into the countryside. Richard accuses Natalie of manipulating him during their altercation in the middle of the road, but saves her when they are both nearly struck by a police cruiser. Then Natalie says she's sorry for using him and that even though she and Sinclair won't be leaving the country after all, she still wanted to throw the party. The visitors swiftly depart after their messy return. Although Sinclair doesn't want to hear their confession, he shows there and is quite clear that he knows what occurred and that he is sorry. The trio strolls into an autumnal sunset by the river at the end of the movie. I'm amazed this film isn't given a better rating because I can't think of a single person who has seen it who didn't enjoy it. All of the female viewers are transfixed by Alan Rickman, who pretty well steals the show. This was many women's first exposure to Rickman, and it was love at first sight. Saskia Reeves cheats on him when she has an affair with her brother, who is played by Clive Owen. At the time, Owen was probably more well known than Rickman because he had just finished filming a highly successful TV drama series. Rate this movie on a scale of 10 in the comment section below. Thank you.